Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mental Health 411. On this week's episode, I have Karen Cabrera, AMFT, who is an associate working at Paloma Therapy Group. We're going to have a conversation about a blog that she recently wrote, and we're going to just take it to Mental Health 411, all things mental health. I'm really excited to have her. I'm going to be bringing her on in a second. I'm just waiting for her to come on. And as soon as she's here, I will be bringing her on. Thank you again for coming on to Mental Health 411 and listening to our show. Let's see. So here we go. I think we are ready. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Paloma. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to have you here. Finally, we're going to start having everybody that's at Paloma Therapy on Mental Health 411 just to talk about, the work that we do and blogs that are coming up. And, one of the interesting blogs that just was published on our website, palomatherapy.com, is yours. And so tell me a little bit about your background. Let everybody here that's listening and watching know who you are and the work that you do.
Yeah, so my name is Karen Cabrera, and I am an associate marriage and family therapist. I'm Latina, and I really passionate about helping people kind of be able to achieve their fullest potential, and walking through with them, life stressors and issues that they're going through. I've worked with the Latino community, and work with kids, with young adults. And it's just amazing being able to implement a lot of really creative things. I love being creative. I love art, and I think really young, I really like that. So being able to implement that into my work with art therapy, play therapy with kids is something that I'm really passionate about. So it's not just a job; it's more of something that I'm just passionate about and doing. And so I've also worked with veterans, and kind of my work with them was with PTSD, sexual abuse, sexual assault, a lot of family trauma. Sometimes we forget that a lot of our initial issues come from family conflict, and so being able to work with that population has been really rewarding too. And then having a bit of experience with the LGBTQA+ community, and being able to work with them through, our office. And so that's been really rewarding and really great to do too.
That's great. I want to talk and bring in a little bit about the blog that you recently wrote. So recently you did some research and you talked about specifically the population of working with veterans. I know you have experience working with veterans. And I found it so interesting that you brought up something that I think we can talk about today, and that is assault and sexual assault with males, and how it's very difficult for men to talk about their emotions, and for men to seek help. And I feel that is something that we need to bring up more, and we need to talk about that men go through domestic violence. They're victims of domestic violence. They're victims of sexual assault. Tell me a little bit about the research you did and what you found.
Yeah, so during school, I was working with veterans, and it was really important for me to understand, a little bit about that PTSD, right? And, it doesn't only occur in combat, right? When we think about PTSD and when we think about the military, specifically military veterans, we think about combat, right? We think about the traumatic events that they have to endure through the training and then actually being in the war zone. But we forget that they also go through a lot of trauma outside of it, right? So such as sexual assault and sexual abuse within the military, right? And so it was really interesting hearing so many of my vets talk about through their kind of experience, right? And having such a difficulty um, being able to express those emotions, being able to process and explore um, the impact of that trauma. As for when we talk about men, it's like emotions is like a woman's thing, right? And then for men, it's like, oh, you don't. Especially when we talk about the Latino community, the African American community, right? When these are cultures where we're very much family based, or certain things are kind of hidden because of just cultural backgrounds, and so emotions are not always.
Shame, yeah, and
Mhm.
shame as
Yeah.
well. When we're bringing in culture, we're bringing in
Mhm.
moral and ethic beliefs of what we could talk about and what we shouldn't talk about. And
Yeah.
specifically men, talking about assault, talking about being victims of
Mhm.
violence is difficult.
Yeah, yeah. And so even adjusting through those emotions, right? And talking about them, and even being able to experience for the first time crying in front of someone, right? Crying in front of a therapist. And so I think it's so difficult, not only just the simple fact of emotions, but then when you bring in trauma, how much harder it is for certain individuals to talk about their emotions and talk about what happened to them, right? And we sometimes, again, believe that, when we talk about sexual abuse or sexual assault, it's a woman's thing. It happens to women, which it does, and it happens a lot. But it also happens to men, right? And it's just not as reported. So we think that it happens less to men, but it actually happens a lot more. And because the military is, you know, a lot of them are men, it happens to men more often in the military. And sometimes it's because of hierarchy, right? It's because of power, it's because of these kind of things. And so it's just difficult for them to address those things, even reporting, because there's going to be a stigma, right, from other, vets, with them. There's going to be, probably they could be demoted because of their title in the military. There could be so many other things that come into play when we talk about sexual abuse in the military.
Mhm.
It feels like you're traumatized not just once through the sexual abuse or sexual assault, but you're also being re-traumatized by even reporting it, or even having to act like nothing happened, right?
Mhm. And I
Mhm.
think I'm just thinking about in the norms of our own communities and how
Mhm.
difficult it is for women, for men, for anyone to
Mhm.
report when they have been sexually harassed, sexually
Mhm.
assaulted.
Um,
And now you bring into a person's life not the norm, right? Not the environment they're used to, not being
mhm.
home, being out of state, out of the country, military base,
Mhm.
and all those components, and trying to just imagine being a victim within this type of environment as a woman, as a man, as a transgendered person, a person in the LGBTQIA community. uh, yeah, it's
Mhm.
something that I cannot fathom the idea of the
Mhm.
strength of a person, of an
Mhm.
individual who does report, right? And
Mhm.
so yeah, can you tell us a little bit about the statistics? Like, what do they show? What do they say, um, in terms of like a little research that you've done for the blog and just your experience? What is it? What are the facts, or what is out there?
Yeah. So, you know, on certain reports, right, especially with when we talk about sexual abuse and sexual assault, and I'm gonna kind of read it through what I have, so I don't make a mistake in saying it. So, although sexual assault and abuse is considered to occur in women most often in the U.S., military men are 10 times more likely to be sexually assaulted than a civilian man. So even when we talk about that, it's you know there's a big difference from someone who is civilian, someone who's not in the military, to someone who is, right? So they are more prone to be sexually assaulted, sexually abused, manipulated, in so many other ways. And one thing that I wanted to even say, kind of even defining what sexual abuse is, because sometimes we think it's just one way or the other. And so I just want to read you how it defined it on the research that I did. And it says, it is a form of sexual violence, including rape, child molestation, incest, and similar forms of consensual sexual contact. Sexual abuse is never only about sex, but often to gain power over victims. So when we talk about that, right, and we bring forth kind of that power that other people, these individuals, want to have over their victims, it's not just about that sexual contact with the victim, but it's more of feeling themselves as powerful, right? And then it comes down to our victims feeling like, and even saying victims, it's like more like survivors, right? They're survivors of this trauma, really being, having to have the double strength to go ahead and report when, this power is being kind of manipulated over them. So, and even another report in 2014, it said nearly 5% of all women and 1% of all men on active duty reported experience unwanted sexual contact, and nearly half of reported from women involved penetrative sexual assault, which was 35% for men. Due to the gender ratios in the military, men experience more sexual violence than women, right?
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
yeah. So it's
It
even
makes sense.
more.
It's
Mhm.
more because there's more men in the military than women, right? And
Mhm,
so that
mhm.
that ratio is not an even count, and so
Yeah.
that makes sense. And it's just a staggering
Mhm,
number of men that go unreported, and to say
mhm,
that it's 10 times more likely that a man will
mhm.
be assaulted in that type of environment is,
Yeah.
I think, something that it's definitely worth talking about, definitely worth
Mhm,
bringing up. I just think about so many things. For example, this week, so a big topic that has been coming up for me in just in conversation and sessions is internalized homophobia.
mhm,
Um, people who are experiencing, questioning whatever it is, and culture and ethically, they are
mhm,
unable to be who they truly
mhm,
want to be in life, and the anger, the resentment that builds up.
mhm,
And sometimes,
mhm,
people that are going through this
mhm,
are either victim survivors or
mhm,
perpetrators of sexual assault.
mhm.
And so more conversations to be had
Yeah,
about, internalized homophobia, definitely.
yeah.
And so just coming into some of the work that we do in our office, and
Mhm,
we serve victims of crime. So we serve people
mhm,
who have been sexually assaulted, who have been survivors of domestic violence.
mhm.
And we are seeing that more men are coming in for therapy.
Yeah.
I believe that, right? And I believe that just, again, sitting a year of sitting at home, a year
Mhm.
of sitting with our emotions and
Yeah.
having to confront so many things that we don't usually confront
Mhm,
has been bringing out more um, men and women too who have survived and who are ready to process and ready to do that work in
mhm.
therapy, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's incredible, right? When seeing more men wanting that resource, right, of therapy, and again coming back to um, feeling maybe a bit hesitant at first, right?
Mhm.
But also feeling comfortable talking to a woman, right? Even
Mhm.
I hear that with certain, clients, when it's like, oh, I feel more comfortable that you are a woman and me talking about my emotions. And even then, right? Again, exploring those emotions, like you said, I think it's been a year a year and a half where we've been having to really be with our emotions.
Mhm.
So, this has brought up a lot of things for so many, and exploring so many things, right? Traumatic events, traumatic childhood, experiences, and, seeing. For so many, just wanting to be listened, wanting to be validated, wanting to be understood. And it's so essential for us as human beings, right? And again, even going back to an experience, working with vets, realizing again for so many men, coming to therapy is going to be scary. It's going to be overwhelming. It's going to be like you're going to feel that resistance at the beginning, right? You're going to feel like, oh, I feeling like they don't want to be there, but they do. And so having this tug of war with themselves. And then also being able, as a therapist, being able to be there, being present with them, and acknowledging those emotions, and acknowledging is
Mhm.
going to be a hard process for them. And, being there to praise them, to encourage them when they have a breakthrough, right? When for the first time they say, I've cried, because I watched a movie that was emotional, and it was the first time that I let myself feel this emotion, and then crying, and then being happy with them, right? Being able to encourage them and praise for what they are accomplishing. And so I think it's giving them that encouragement, and also being able to again validate those emotions, because for a lot of men, again, we come back to that stigma, right? That men shouldn't cry, men shouldn't express what they feel. And so being able to be there and say, good job for expressing how you're feeling. Good job for saying, I feel this way today. And walking with them through that too. Because it's a scary moment. I mean, when you're not comfortable with something in a new environment, I think we all get really scared and anxious. So being able to ground them, right? Being able to do those EMDR resourcing, right?
Mhm.
Safe place, containing those emotions. And so being able to bring that into those sessions to ground them, and for them to be able to express and explore those emotions that have been kind of like hidden for quite some time. So, you know, bringing that into therapy is going to be really important for them too.
Yeah, and all those things that you just said is just like it's yes, it's validating and it's resourcing, and definitely I, truly believe in EMDR, and I know you as well. You're an EMDR trained therapist, and it's really what we focus on is
Mhm,
trauma work, and we focus on
mhm,
really going deep into processing what people have been
mhm.
bottling up for many years.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, it's great that we are having this conversation to normalize
Mhm,
what men are feeling and what they want to talk
mhm,
about. And it's interesting that you said that men will, oftentimes ask for a female therapist.
mhm,
It does happen. I've been talking
mhm,
to my assistant, to the administrative assistant, and she's been telling me that men
mhm,
call and that 98% of the time they will say,
mhm,
"I want a female therapist." I'm
mhm,
not sure what that's about, and I do know that there's men that specifically call and they say, "I want a
mhm,
male therapist." And
mhm,
so when they want that, they really that's all they want, right? But,
mhm,
usually they want a female therapist, and so that's like an interesting, I think, topic also, and
mhm,
there's some research, about that. And if there
mhm.
isn't, that would be just interesting to know more
Yeah.
about why, right? Why
Mhm,
when men are searching for therapists, and I wonder if that happens often. Maybe it's
mhm.
happening in our office. I don't know, or maybe it happens more often than we think.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something to also think about. So bringing up the topic of men and families and relationships, and I think that
Yeah.
right, and talking about trauma,
Mhm,
veterans, and relationships, and surviving assault, surviving violence, and just culture growing up, just everything, like, as a whole,
mhm,
and how then we create relationships, and how important it is
mhm,
for men who even if they haven't gone through trauma, even if they haven't
Mhm.
gone through sexual assault, but how important it is for them to understand what style of relationship,
Mhm.
right, they connect with the best.
Mhm.
And I believe that going to therapy is the best
Mhm.
place
Yeah.
to figure out what to work on and
Mm.
what to do. Oftentimes, I find that individuals, they come into therapy because of relationship issues. And
Mm.
who doesn't, right? And most
Mhm.
people want to come in to figure out what to do best to have the best relationships. And
Mhm.
again, it's like emphasizing the importance of therapy
Mhm.
to figure that out, to figure out what happened during those formative years in your life.
Mhm.
And how was your, style of attachment created
Mhm.
to what experiences and what we remember?
Mhm.
And going through those steps to figure that out so that we can have the best relationship possible in our life, and find that partner that maybe
Yeah.
is in the same type of work in their own life,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. Relationships is something that comes up often. And, again, even when we talk about PTSD, we often just, kind of define it or put it in a box when it's just sexual abuse or sexual assault. But it's also a lot of family trauma, right? Growing up in a very, domestic violent, household, or just having these traumas very young. And so, a lot of these issues come up, right, about relationships. How do I communicate, right? And even a couple weeks ago, having a couple of just this kind of was brought up too, this conversation of, you know, um, being asked, is this when we have other clients do they also talk about relationships, because they were like, oh, am I the only one who talks about relationships? And it's like, this is a very common theme for so many relationships. We are, our species is based on that relationship, that connectedness with other people. And so being able again to validate those things in session, and being able to say, this is a common theme, and there's nothing wrong to want to explore more of this in therapy, in a very safe place, right, where you're going to be understood, where there's no judgment going to be brought up, right? And so yeah, those common questions are brought up. Am I the only one who talks about this? Am I the only one who brings up these issues? And again, that's a very common theme about relationships. And it's not an easy topic either to bring up, right?
Mhm.
Bringing up again, that of men sometimes wanting a female therapist. Again, when I see it with certain clients, it's like, I feel like I'm going to be judged by a man, right? Or I'm going to feel belittled, or I'm going to feel certain weaknesses, or and so with a female, it's like, oh, well, you talk about emotions all the time, so it will be easier. So maybe
Mhm.
that's why there's that connection, right? I mean, it's different for everyone. But it's really again, important themes to be able to talk in therapy. And I also noticed that at our initial sessions, men won't bring this up. It's going to take a couple of weeks, even a month or two, for them to feel more comfortable in bringing this up. I don't know if that's happens to you, Nancy, but
It
I've
definitely
seen that
happens.
happen to me. Yeah.
Mhm. It happens.
Mhm.
I think it's like they're kind of testing the waters and wanting to
Mhm.
know how safe is
Yeah.
this space. And often I think that many people do it depending on what they want to talk about, right? So some people want to
Mhm.
talk about, they come in with a certain idea, like, I want to talk about my sexuality, I want to talk about sex,
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm having issues physically, emotionally, whatever it is. And so they test the waters and just talk about their emotions for sessions, and then they get right into
Mhm.
it. Like, oh, by the way, I'm having issues here and here and here, right? And then that's
Mhm.
when they feel safe, and wow,
Yeah.
they feel that comfort, and we
Mhm.
start talking about the real issues in the process.
Mhm.
I think, and one of the things that you brought up is interesting, that I think is often in everyone's life, mostly, um, And that is that when something happens to us, we feel like we're the only person that is going through that.
Yeah.
So a person that goes through sexual assault will often say, I'm the only one, no one understands me, or, it's like that, those first thoughts of no one understands what I'm going through. What do I do? Has anybody ever gone through what I'm going through? And so again, like right now, mental health is such a big trend. We've been doing it so long, but it's like such a big thing. And so I feel that all these conversations, things like this that we're doing right now, are so helpful and helping just anyone and people listening, watching, recognize that whatever it is that you're going through, someone else has gone through it, someone else is also going through it, and bring it up, talk about it, definitely reach out, to process. And so, just kind of to close things off, I just want to remind everybody, I don't think I said it in the beginning of the show, but I just want to remind everyone that, what we're talking about is information. It's for entertainment purposes only. If you are out there and you're seeking help, please reach out to a professional for advice. Again, just informative and for entertainment purposes. And if you are in the state of California and you do want to think about coming into therapy at our office at Paloma Therapy, you can go to our website at palomatherapy.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Paloma Therapy, and you can reach out to Karen. Karen is on our website. You can definitely set something up to consult with her. And so that's really what we wanted to talk about today. We just wanted to bring up a topic that we found very interesting. And so is there anything else that you want to talk about, Karen, before we say goodbye to everybody?
Well, just one, thank you for bringing me on. And two, for everyone else, that therapy is not such a scary place. And we all, as therapists, we try our best to make that safe place for everyone. So, if there is someone who is in need of that resource, reaching out. I think that's the first and best step that we can all make. So, yeah.
Well, thank you again, Karen, for coming on to Mental Health 411. I am your host, Paloma Collins, and this is Karen Cabrera, AMFT. She can be found again at Paloma Therapy, and I will talk to you all next time. Bye.